Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's mindfulness practices. I'm one of your hosts, Frank Baird, and I am here with.
Vivian, hi everyone.
Yeah, I'm always unsure whether I'm going to say my last name or your last name or just like it's Frank and Vivian. You can be on a first name basis with us. Welcome to the class. If you're new here, welcome for the first time. And if you've been here before, some of this will sound familiar. We want to welcome you and let you know that this is a drop-in class suitable for any level of knowledge or practice. You don't have to know anything. Well, I guess you have to know how to get onto the internet and how to register for the class to get here, but you don't need any specific knowledge or skills based on what we're going to do today. But this month's theme has been awe. Oh, yeah. And tonight, Vivian is going to guide us in a practice and talk a little bit about the awesomeness of others. Take it away, Vivian. And I would just like to say, you're awesome.
Thank you. You're awesome. Thank you. I felt that. Welcome everyone. And yeah, so let's hop right in. We're going to start with the practice as we always do. So, how to practice? We have the same regular rules as Frank mentioned. We have no expectations that you know what we're about to do. And actually, the practice that I'm going to be offering you today, you may have never actually come across. So, at least not in this way. So, I just invite you to get comfortable. And that means in whatever posture you're comfortable, either laying down or sitting. I wouldn't recommend doing this practice in movement, and that's not because you can't do it while you're moving. It's that when we bring movement into a mindfulness technique, it actually brings up the difficulty, the challenge level very high, because now you're bringing in your motor skills into your mindfulness practice. Your eyes can be open or closed or anything in between. If you decide to keep your eyes open, maintain a really soft gaze like this a few feet in front of you without really allowing your eyes to focus in on anything. And you might be able to do this by kind of noting the peripheral vision as opposed to what's actually in front of you, but making it very soft. And this is just an attempt to try and minimize the visual distractions you might experience. And depending on the day and depending on what's going on in your life, sometimes we get extra distracted when we close our eyes because we start playing the film, with our eyes closed. Everything starts bombarding us. But sometimes it happens when we're sitting there with our eyes open. Know that both can happen. It's just a matter of where you happen to be that day. And so you can experiment with this as we do this practice. All you have to do is listen to my voice. I'll be giving you prompts, things to think about, things to consider. There will be pauses in between of silence, and that's to allow you some time to process the information that you're getting and to adopt it, see what you want to do with that prompt. Notice where your mind goes with it. And with that, it might wander. Very common that our mind will wander because our mind is always looking for novelty and not necessarily being directed where to go. Staying really gentle and kind with yourself, keeping in mind that for most of today, if not every day, you're spending your wakeful hours, your mind is deciding where it wants to go and what it's going to focus on and how it's going to evaluate a situation. And now you're kind of reining it in. It's going to create a struggle. So knowing that upfront, that it's going to happen, that the practice of that struggle is where you build that mindfulness inquiry muscle. That's actually where you build. It doesn't necessarily feel great, but that's where you kind of build the relationship and build that inner knowing. So don't get discouraged if you experience that. So all we're asking you to do is, as I give you a prompt, you reflect on it, you Start working with it. Notice what's happening for you in that moment. And as always, you can stop if you need to, knowing that if you're here, you're going to have access to the recording so you can revisit it at any time that you feel comfortable. Or you can step away for a bit and come back for a bit. Or, if you have, this is what I'm offering today as a practice. Of course, we want you to practice with it and see if it works for you so that you can add it to your personal toolkit. But if today you really need something else, another practice that you know would be nourishing, know that you can just jump to that practice that you know would be more helpful for you in this moment. Part of us building this toolkit for ourselves is knowing and having that discernment of what do I need in this moment? And how can I offer it to myself in the most skillful way? So apply that to this experience too. Yes, we're offering a particular practice. No, you don't have to stick to it if there's one that you think would be more helpful, knowing the whole time that we're here to support each other in what we're doing. Okay, and with that, just invite you to stretch up and settle into your seat or into your location if you're going to be laying down. And taking a couple of deep breaths, maybe in through the nose and out with a sigh. So one of the things that has been coming up, I saw in a recent CNN article saying that sighing is actually immensely effective as a relaxation tool. So doing that a couple of times, a deep breath in, exhaling with a sigh, until you really feel like you're here. And then letting the breath go to its natural rhythm, whatever that may be. And the practice we're going to do today is we're going to do the 3-point check-in where we notice what is the state of our mind, what's the state of our emotional landscape, and how our body is doing. And then we're going to shift gears to kind of give focus to where we find the awesomeness of others. So with that, offering your awareness and attention to that area in and around your forehead, behind your forehead, above your ears, where a lot of our thinking happens, where we would probably point to if we were asked, where is your mind physically? I'm beginning to notice, what's the state of my mind tonight? In this moment, what is the state of my mind? So am I working with an alert mind? Or is it foggy, sluggish? Is it serene? Is it curious? Sometimes it's hard to identify what's the state of our mind, and if you can't pinpoint it, that's fine. Right? Just be like, I don't know, this is the state of my mind right now. This, just noticing, maybe just noticing my mind. So you can just note the general sensations of what that feels like. What does alert feel like in and around the face and eyes, in the head? What does serene feel like? Or whatever is arising. And you can ask yourself that question a couple of times, giving some space for the answers. You can ask, what's the state of my mind now? And notice. If something comes up, identify it. If something doesn't come up, wait a little more and ask again. From here, I invite you to bring your attention down to your chest, in and around your heart. And this is where often we feel our emotions the strongest, or at least when they first arise, we feel it in this area. So coming into that heart chest area, begin to note any feelings or emotions that might be here right now. Am I happy, sad, neutral, excited, irritated, cheerful, annoyed, angry, joyful? I'm offering up these words just in case it might feel like difficult to think of what emotions. Obviously, there are an infinite number of ways of describing what emotions are here right now. So noticing, are there emotions here right now that you can note? And sometimes they come in combinations. And with them, the way we know they're here, there are actual physical sensations. So when we're feeling elation or excitement, we kind of feel fluttering in our chest. When we feel sadness, maybe we experience our shoulders bending forward. Take note. How is this emotion showing up in the way I'm holding up my body, or in the sensations that might be happening right now? What feeling is here right now? And now let's offer up that same degree of attention and awareness to what's the state of the physical body right now. So start by giving the attention down into the toes and begin to scan the body upward, up through the ankles, the shins, the calves, the knees, the upper legs and thighs, the sitting bones, and through your torso, up through the shoulders, down the upper arms, lower arms, hands and fingers, up through the neck, into the head and ears and face. Notice, are there any areas of pain or tension? Not getting too caught up into why it's showing up that way, or what was the cause of whatever either pleasant or unpleasant sensation you might be noticing. We're just taking the cues of kind of popcorn style of how the body is communicating. Any areas where there is no sensation might feel like either as neutral, or it might feel blank or like there's a void. And other areas right next to that might feel very strong. There might be movement or vibration. So using whatever language that helps you, like, how are you doing, body? And letting those sensations respond and carry your attention to that area. Getting curious. So you can do it in this popcorn style of broad question, and the mind goes to where you feel the sensations most strongly. Or you might want to do that movement of awareness and attention again through the toes, up the feet, into the legs, the trunk of the body, over the shoulders and through the hands. So if this practice is helpful, know that you can come back to it as we move through the next steps of the practice period. We're going to be shifting a few gears into some other areas of attention. You can always come back to, what's the state of my thoughts and my mind in this moment? What's the state of my feelings in this moment? How is my body? So know you can always come back to this as we move. I'm going to be offering some words you can use, but know that these are just ways to help you navigate the information that I'm offering, but I want you to actually replace them with your own so that it comes directly from your own voice and the depth of your understanding, your beliefs. And know that you can always give yourself physical support by holding your own hand or putting your hand over your heart, even cradling your face if that feels comfortable. So for this first step, I invite you to think of someone you know as an acquaintance, someone you know of and feel neutral or even mildly positive about. So I invite you to mentally picture them, their face. Try and pull them in as vividly as you can, maybe even doing that by looking into their eyes and giving them a smile. And if that's not comfortable, as you bring this person to mind, Again, a very neutral person. If more than one comes to mind, just pick one. Just allow their full presence to kind of come through your mind and imagination. And rest into your breathing as you take this person in. And you can reflect that this person is a human being like you, living in this same age on earth as you. We can take this as an opportunity to really behold and draw in their uniqueness. You can send loving kindness to them. That is sending them wishes of being healthy, happy, at peace. I think all of us in our own way, however skillful or unskillful, are always kind of in pursuit of those things. Happiness, health, peace. So, on that first reflection, I invite you to think about this person's unique gifts and strengths. And you might, because you don't know them that well, have to guess, and that's fine. Just think of the unmeasured, immeasurable reserves of their courage, their intelligence, their persistence in this life, everything that helped them to bring them to this point in their life. Maybe they were patient, maybe they're witty, maybe they're wise. There are gifts that this person isn't even aware of in themselves. Resilience, courage, creativity. Just bring in all of the gifts that you can think of that they may possess. And think about what these gifts and skills and deep potential could do for the healing of their community and of the world even, and of anyone who would come into contact with them if they actually believed and acted on those. And as you consider this, reflect on how you actually hold the deep desire that this person be free from their own fear, whether real or imaginary, free from greed, free from any resentments or hatred, or any sense of confusion about who they are, or their qualities, their strengths. And how much you want them to be free from all the causes of their suffering. So sense into how much you genuinely want this for them. And that depth of a wish that they have a true vision and understanding of their gifts. You want them to know and remove the causes of their suffering. That's how we experience loving kindness for one another. And letting that image of that person go, but keeping that feeling of loving kindness that hopefully was brought up with that vision. Notice how you feel, what you're sensing. Be open to whatever comes up. Maybe taking another deep breath in with a side exhale. Remember, you can offer yourself some physical support as you do this too. Hand over heart, holding your own hand, cradling your face, hugging yourself. So if you're comfortable doing this, you can just stay here. Maybe bringing up that memory, noting the feelings, and supporting yourself. But if you're comfortable and want to explore a little more on the next step, I invite you to bring someone else to mind. Again, let it be someone you've met or have been introduced to before, not someone you know very well. You've seen them somewhere. They've brought up your curiosity about them. Bring them to mind as vividly as you can. And again, open yourself up to the unique and unrepeatable human being that is here, at least in your mind's eye. And I invite you now to open yourself up to the pain, challenges, suffering that may have been an obstacle in their lives. As in all human lives, they definitely would have experienced some unpleasant experiences, challenges, setbacks, sorrows. And here too, you can probably only guess at them since you don't know them that well. Maybe it was disappointments, failures, losses, loneliness, abuse. There are hurts and pains that this person may have never, ever shared to any other human being. And knowing that you cannot take the pain away, you can still bear witness and be with it. So I want you to sense into your readiness to be with this person's suffering, that instinct to help. That willingness to help alleviate any part of it. And recognize that that is your compassionate nature arising in this moment. And holding that suffering as an inevitability of this human life, that it's going to come up in some shape or form. We can offer that level of compassion to ourselves and all those who we know and don't know. This is the salve for healing our own heart and that of those who we come into contact with. And so, in your own words and in your own thoughts, with your own feelings, send this person any and all well wishes, either as words, prayer, energy for continued strength and healing. If you're visual, you can imagine it as light. And whenever you're ready, letting the image of them in your mind's eye to dissolve. And again, coming back to how you're feeling. Taking a deep breath in and exhaling with a sigh. Maybe doing that breath one more or two more times on your own, so as to ground your heart and body. Now, if you're comfortable, you can bring yet someone else that you genuinely like or are curious about, someone that you want to befriend maybe, and see them in your mind's eye, maybe even offering them a smile. So as you see this person, consider how good it is to know them, how inspiring it would be to work together on a joint interest or a project towards maybe a common goal, or perhaps something really big that you had in mind. Imagine what it would be like to plot and plan and conspire together, take risks and rely on each other. In the process, discovering each other's strengths and maybe some weaknesses. Celebrating successes along the way and consoling each other through the setbacks. Forgiving each other when you mess up. And simply enjoying being there for one another. So as you move through those steps of what it would be like to have a common vision, purpose, goal, whatever that possibility may be, notice that you're opening up to the depth of what it's like to have human connection for all of us. The power in each of our powers, the joy within each of our joys. So I invite you to, again, take leave of this person in whatever way that feels right. You may imagine waving to them goodbye or giving them a hug, whatever feels best for you right now. And come back to how you're feeling in this moment, offering yourself some support with a deep breath, with physical touch. And before we move on to the next visualization, I want you to bring your awareness back to the body, letting it drop deep like a stone. Sink it below the level of what words can express. You can recognize that you're here because you've won the life lottery. The odds of being born at all are 1 in 400 trillion. Think of your parents, grandparents, and if you have to imagine them, that's fine too if you didn't know them. You can even imagine your great-grandparents, all 8 of them, what they look like, and add to them your 16 great-great-grandparents, your 32 great-great-great-grandparents, they all had to come into being and thrive and survive and flourish so they could live long enough to bring to life their progeny that eventually led to you. Reflect on the deep flows of relationships and paths that had to cross one another. Some of them we really can only imagine. And those deep flows actually interweave through our lives now as we practice together. And with that in mind, I invite you to bring one more person into your mind's eye, and it could be anyone at all. As you imagine that person's face, imagine that under an infinite number of possibilities at another time or place, this person could have been a friend, a lover, your nemesis, a relative. They too won that life lottery. They too share in this lineage, great, 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 great grandparents, and that our lives might run parallel right now, or they might even intersect, but that regardless, both of you are part of this human interweaving web. And that web is so tight, none of us can fall out of it. That no misstep or stupidity or mistake, failure, act of cowardice can ever take you out of this living, evolving web of human life. Do your best to let your mind touch that and rest in that in whatever way feels right in this moment. There's a peace when we know that no matter what happens, we will always fall right back into this beautiful human web. And from that place, we can take beautiful actions. We can take innovative risks. We can explore and wonder, experience awe. And this is the experience of peace and our willingness to ride this wave of life in whatever way it comes at us. And now I invite you to bring all 4 people that you imagined in this practice, maybe even having them seated in front of you mentally, and you send them some loving energy and your well wishes or prayers, kind thoughts. I'm going to offer some statements that you can use. But of course, I invite you to use your own. So you say to them, may we all be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May we be healthy and strong in body and mind. May we all be peaceful and at ease, always comforted. May we all be happy. One in 400 trillion. In the words of the poet Mary Oliver, tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And now, as we round out this practice period, I invite you to breathe in a deep and comfortable breath and sigh out the exhale. And breathe in again and sigh out. becoming aware of the space that you're in, moving your eyes, taking in the different objects in the room that you're in or the space that you're in, those that are close and far. When you're ready, if your eyes were closed, gently fluttering them open to let the light in. Maybe even taking a stretch or two, whatever feels comfortable. I just did that with my neck and somehow I adjusted something. I heard a clack. So I wanted to, somehow I've lost, oh, I see what's happened. So thank you all for joining in that practice period. Like I mentioned, the topic for today is awe in others. I think oftentimes we lose track of what we would find awesome in others. I'm lucky to have Frank in my life as my collaborator, because no matter what's going on over the course of the week, I know that when we're prepping for this, we always have each other's presence. And so this is a shout out to Frank, that he is one of the awesome people in my life. I wanted to come back to what is awesomeness. And for me, I have to break it down into its pieces. And all the definitions were coming up with kind of 3 levels to it. One was that it has a physical, like we actually feel it in our bodies. Oh my gosh, I love all the hearts and the thumbs up. Y'all, I hope actually, let me take a pause. How was that practice for you all? I want to see it, if that worked. I'm going to give it, I think there's a bit of a delay, but if you know how to use the emojis, let me know how that practice was to kind of pull in 4 different people that you didn't necessarily know. Yeah. So a lot of times we can kind of imagine how wonderful a person is. And we all know this if we've been in relationships, that when we first meet that person, we're so enamored, and like there are no red flags. The red flags sometimes are even their cute idiosyncrasies, right? We're having that grand experience of their presence. We're having that physical experience of elation and love, right? And so it's coming out as emotions. It's coming out in a physical way, because emotions don't have any other way to come out of us other than our actual physical sensations, right? That's how we know. And it's oftentimes a response to an inordinately striking stimuli, right? So something that, in the way that Frank brought into it last week's definition, something that kind of is so big that it pushes out against our own framework of how we see reality. The one thing I want to bring to mind is that awe is actually, we think of it as something positive, and we've been presenting it as something positive, but that pushing out against our framework can actually also be in something that is not particularly pleasant. And what comes to mind, was the recent earthquakes in Turkey, or the 9/11 attack. These are things that and they create that shift in the way we frame our reality. And then we have to immediately kind of renegotiate how we're going to see things. So when we think about how we can experience awe in others, we can recognize that it can be positive or it can be negative. When you think of the serial murderers. It's like, how did that happen, right? It's like, whoa. I also want to bring forth that our awe in others can be cultivated or it can arise spontaneously. A lot of times, and I want to say that it can be cultivated because a lot of times when we're, especially in long-term relationships or with those that we have more complicated relationship with, like parents, children, partners, it we kind of fall back into, I know what you're going to say. I know how you trigger me, or we come in defensive. But what would it be like to step back and apply any of those practices we just did to someone that we know really well, right? It's a lot more challenging. In the same way that when I was giving the prompts or the directions in the beginning, like movement is going to bring another level of challenge. We're literally trying to break the frame that our mind has created around this person. And when we do that, we allow them to be 100% themselves. Not allow them. How do I say this? It's not about allowing them, but rather we see them at 100% themselves. As we break those frames, we see them for who they are. And in seeing them as who they are, in the same way when we were talking last week about the natural world, what makes us watch nature documentaries and be in awe of, lions in the savannah, right? What's majestic about a lion or a mountain or a redwood forest is that every single one of them is just being who they are completely. They're not being anything more or anything less than what they are. The problem is when we come into these relationships with others is that we start squeezing in around who they are, and we can't experience them in the fullness of their awesomeness. And so the antidote to that is letting them surprise us. Stepping back from our biases, our preconceived ideas of how our interaction with this person is going to go, and actually coming in with a bit of curiosity and inquisitiveness as to like, what are you up to in this moment? What are you going to do? And yeah, it might be something similar to what you've seen before. Like leaving that open too. I'm open to the fact that this can be exactly how I thought it was going to turn out, but like giving it some space, some breathing space, some air. In the same way, in that first week, we were talking about awe blockers. There are awe blockers to how we approach colleagues, family, right? Acquaintances, or even how we interact in the world. Like if we have certain ideas of how people should be. So having expectations is a killer, is an awe blocker, right? The would, should, could. It's, if you think about it, it's such a killer to ourselves. I should have, I would, I could have, kind of doing that to ourselves. How much more is it painful and limiting and constricting when we do it to others, people that we can't even control their behavior. And yet we think that there's a specific way that they should be manifesting and showing up for us or showing up in the world. Related to that, but kind of different, is assumptions, making assumptions about situations. That's really easy to do when you're living with someone day in and day out or working with someone day in and day out. But neither of these actually allow you any room to maneuver. And they actually make the opposite of what is needed, which is a sense of vulnerability and openness. It makes that, it annihilates those. When we have expectations, when we make assumptions, it actually makes us resistant. It actually makes us guarded. It closes us up to a certain extent. And we need to recognize that being that person that can anticipate the next that person's next move, it actually might feel safe. It makes us feel protected. It makes us feel knowing. But it's the trade-off of those perceived feelings of safety and knowing what's going to happen next is not being open to the possibilities, the surprises, and the awe that might come up. So it's a matter of balancing, like, yeah, okay, I can see that this actually serves, this has a purpose in my life, approaching it with these expectations and assumptions, okay. And yet it comes at a cost too. I kept individualism in here because it's also an awe blocker. And the way I want you to consider this is when we think that there's only one good way to do something, and that's my way, whether it's the speed that we're driving all on the highway or, hi, Frank. You're back. Yeah, thank you for joining. So, how are you doing? Oh, I just realized the time. That's why Frank is back. Okay.
Just
so
checking in.
Okay, so I want to honor all of our time that we've committed. So stress being that recognizing that we all live in an the stress that we're under as humans on this earth right now are beyond what anyone before us has experienced. They had different stressors. The stressors we have now are pushing up against what we even consider our sphere of influence, which we can talk about it on the last week when we do Q&A. But with that, sorry.
No, not at all. Because some of the comments are beautiful practice, right? So
sweet.
Good.
Yeah. So, okay, homework. I'm sorry, we don't do homework.
We do between session practices.
I don't know if you've experienced Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It was a TV show back in the 70s and 80s that I grew up with. And he would tell the kids that in the time of catastrophe and to find the helpers, to always, if you're watching a video and that's something, again, awful, the way you can reframe the situation is by looking for the helpers. So I invite you for this week to find the helpers, whether they're in your life or in circumstances that you're reading about. Our mind is going to glom on to the negative situation if it is a negative situation. But if we can find the helpers, it helps to create the balance. I want you to also, if it's possible, take note of a quality of someone you know well and like a awesome quality that they have, whether they're good listeners or they're great cooks, whatever, and kind of relish in that and let them surprise you. And see if you can look at strangers with a more open heart, open eyes, take them in. I love looking into people's eyes because everybody has beautiful eyes. I've been on this earth, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but I've yet to meet anyone that has non-awesome eyes. So I love eyes. Okay, so with that, you're going to get the slides, and the video. And they're all going to be linked in an email that you'll receive. And then okay, fine. Next week, we're on the body. Sorry.
Awesome.
We took long on the practice.
We took just as much time as the practice needed. And it was awesome. Yeah. And I both mean that, and right, we have to use awe in every possible way this month. So thank you so much, Vivian, and thank you all for being here. And come back next week. We're going to do more awesome practices. Thank you.
Thank you.